Welcome to the Life with a Difference podcast, a platform to amplify the voices of those living with a visible difference, and also to provide relevant information from industry leaders and experts. Do you mind introducing yourself and explaining a bit about your visible difference, please?
Thank you very much. And thanks, first of all, for inviting me. My name is Gary Parsons. I have Bell's palsy, and that is something that I experienced for the very first time just before my 18th birthday. Yeah, I'm a grand old age of 42 is my latest line to say. And so a very long time ago, 24, 25 years ago now. So it's something I've lived with for a very long time.
Do you mind if we jump straight into Love My Face? Because you are a bit of a low-key celeb now. I'm a bit starstruck starting this conversation with you. Do you mind talking about that show for people that hadn't seen it and the part that you played in it?
Yeah, not at all. It was a huge privilege to be part of that show. So for those of people that haven't seen it, haven't got around to watching it yet, it's still available on Channel 4, on demand on Channel 4 here in the UK. And ultimately that show was, how I understand it, was to open up a conversation about people that live with a visible difference, but a facial difference. And I'm sure we'll use that terminology interchangeable during this conversation. But for me, when I got, well, I'll tell you how it started. I had somebody approach me from their research team to say, we've seen what you're posting online. We're casting for a new show and we'd really like to talk to you. I thought it was a scam. I get a lot of messages like this. I'm sure you do as well. I
Yeah.
genuinely thought it was a scam. And then I Googled it and I went onto Channel 4. They'd announced it. I'd found amazing people like John O'Lancaster talking about it on their socials. And I realized very quickly this was real. But never in a million years did I think that I would be chosen to go onto the show. And yeah, the show gives me the opportunity to talk about my facial difference, my visible difference. It gives me and gave me the opportunity to talk to other people with similar lived experiences in lots of different ways. So I'm not going to spoil it too much, but Tawonge, who was on the show with me, so she had a car crash at a similar age to me, and she lives life with a scar, and it also has affected her eye and a tearing. And meeting somebody with her, where we could talk about me with my Bell's palsy, her with a scar. It doesn't sound like we have much in common in lots of ways, but in so many more ways, and I'm sure you'll understand, we had so much in common, and it
Mm-hmm.
was amazing. And she's a really good friend of mine. That's reminded me I need to send her a WhatsApp. I've not caught up with her for ages. Life has got in the way again, but we've built a really good friendship with her, for example, and it put me in a place to make those friendships, but also give me the opportunity to opt to go and have surgery and talk to some real specialists in the industry, like Miss Caloroy Savetta, absolute expert in the field, and having that conversation and giving me the ability to make a very informed decision of whether surgery was even an option or was it even worth going through for the
Mm-hmm.
outcome.
Mm-hmm.
It was great. Great.
Mm-hmm.
I've grown so much since filming that all those many years ago.
How long was the gap between recording and then being able to tell everyone else?
Crikey. So I know it finally got delivered to Channel 4 about a year before it was aired on TV. So I spent a good year waiting for it to go onto
Oh man,
TV.
it's such a long time, isn't it? These
But
things move so slowly.
absolutely. But it took probably a good 2 years to be able to film it. And because there was so many different people involved in the episode, there were some people that their treatment took a very long time.
Hmm.
There was they had to go back several times. If you watched other episodes, so mine was episode 2 of 4 different episodes in the series. If you look at other episodes, for example, Mia. So Mia has alopecia, and you see the exciting development that she goes through with growing her hair. But when she gets to the end of the show, you'll only see half of her journey. And we're in touch now. We've been speaking very openly about keeping on top of that. And that, yeah, that took a long time for her to go through that process. So yeah, it's been like 3 years of my life to live it. But
Yeah.
again, it's just so many beautiful people, so many great people that I've been able to get to speak to, and including yourself. And I extended family, I guess, in lots of ways. That
Mm,
the community that that has been out there that have been amazingly supportive.
mm.
The therapy that, whether it formally or informally, the therapy and friendship that I've had with John O'Lancaster has been absolutely life changing.
It's the community is so lovely and so welcoming and so supportive, and yeah, I almost feel a sense of guilt in that I struggle to keep up the relationships because I want to like check in on everyone and make sure everyone's doing okay. And something that I've noticed is that everyone is doing their own projects. And I don't want to miss anyone's projects. I want to make sure I'm supporting everyone. But as you say, it's such a lovely, lovely community. I thought you did an absolutely fantastic job on the show. I thought that, ultimately in these kind of shows, you have very limited time to get your point across. You've got kind of a couple of minutes to make your point of what is a very complex and emotional and difficult journey. And I thought you delivered some, I don't know if this is the right word, but sound bites, I guess, that were just really powerful. Like when you talked about, I just want to live my life uninhibited. That's all you said that's the one thing you wanted to do. You said, I didn't smile for 20 years. Can I focus on something else other than my face? I thought in such a short time, you were able to really, get across some really sort of powerful ideas. What do you think the mission of the show was? And do you think it sort of completed that mission, would you say?
Good question. It's my interpretation, I've got to say. So my interpretation of the show and the mission behind it was to get, I guess, one way it was to get conversation started, and it absolutely did that. I've had people approach me that have said thank you for speaking out, for talking about something. Let's face it, Bell's palsy is something that it's the most common form of facial paralysis. It feels, and in so many ways, I was really shocked and surprised that I got chosen to go on the show, because I felt like what I was experiencing in my visible difference was fairly invisible compared to other people. And when I spoke to the producers, they very much said to me, and it's a point that was raised during the, I'm not going to say the audition process, but the research, the conversation process. And it was that Jono said it doesn't matter what it looks like on the outside to other people. It's how it is perceived, how it feels internally to you. We don't compare. We don't say that looks significant, so therefore it must be significant, because that might be huge on the inside to somebody, but it might be very small and very little on the outside. And going back to your question about the mission of the show, for me and seeing how it played out, it was about those conversations. It was about people on the show. And again, I won't spoil my episode. There was somebody on my episode who very much had a very perceived facial visible difference, and there's been lots of conversation that we've had together, and I've seen people discuss away, and friends and family, with that person, where they said, we didn't notice, we didn't really see it. And I said to her, isn't that the point of the show, that this person has lived with this thought, this mindset, this perception of themselves for the last 20 years of or more of their life, that they are living that every single day. No, it might look like nothing to you, but it's how that person feels on the inside. And I think it really did show, and hopefully it came across. And I'm sure you'll hit a question thrown back to you, whether it did come across, is that we are all living our own lives. We are all trying to navigate life, and we have got our own challenges. We're dealing with our own battles, and it doesn't matter how visible our difference is. It's inside that really counts.
Hmm. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that it showed a really nice spectrum, and it's the amount of people I talk to, and I hear the exact same thing. Of I wasn't sure if I qualified. Essentially, and my friend Dan Elston, he has a large facial scar. He said something similar. My friend Ellie, who through PTSD set herself on fire, said that she didn't feel deserving of empathy and sympathy because it was, in quotes, self-inflicted. My other friend Molly, who has alopecia because, it's just hair. It seems to be such a common thing that people just dismiss what they're going through. I don't know if that's a societal issue in that we feel quite dismissed and like we just need to kind of shut up and crack on. And so we're worried about um, making a fuss and complaining, I suppose. But that's such a common thing. And as you say, I think the show highlighted really, really well that this is on a spectrum, and it's not. You don't have to be a, really extreme case, whatever that sort of looks like. We're all on this spectrum, and it all affects us in our own separate ways. It was quite. I feel like it was quite sort of. It was supposed to be quite light watching, wasn't it? It was supposed to be fairly gentle and calm, and just sort of and making it accessible to the mainstream, I suppose. But I just want to say that I think Hughes did a really good job to. Still in that scenario sort of highlight how difficult it can be and how life-changing it can be. Do you think there is anything that you would improve, I guess? Is if you were director, producer, would you do anything different?
I don't want to get in trouble with Andrew and the rest of the team. What would I do differently? I Comments that I've had given back to me, and I think these are really fair comments. And you're absolutely right. What would I do differently? I don't think there was anything wrong with the show, but what I might do differently is I might bring in less. That there was a lot of different people throughout the show, and I would probably limit those down to lesser people. But then at the same time, those people don't get help. But I'm sure there was people that did get told no when they had conversations. So I get that. But if there was less people and we could go on that journey, I think the biggest thing and the biggest takeaway for me, and others have said this to me as well, is not the physical transformation that people have gone through on the show, but it was a psychological transformation, that self-acceptance, that self-love. I absolutely went on that journey more than anything else to love myself, to accept myself, to smile and uninhibitedly. That was my journey. And if I could have shown and demonstrated and spoke about that in a lot deeper way, then I think that would have helped a lot more people.
Mhm.
I worry that lots of people might have watched the show and said, they approached me and said, "What was that surgery that they spoke to you about? What was that surgery called? And how does it work? And how can I have that surgery?" And there were still a lot of people that approached me after the show and they just wanted to know about the surgery. And I pushed back to every single person and I said, the surgery is not the thing that you need to be focusing on. It's that self acceptance and self love. And the people that didn't get it, there was a couple of critics in the media that didn't get that, but there were so many more people that did understand that it was a psychological journey. So I think I probably would have gone deeper into that and maybe had one person go across 4 episodes rather than just one individual episode. But you do
Yeah.
see me in every single episode. You see me crying at the start of every episode. Um, I sat and
Yeah.
watched it with my mother, my mum, and my mum burst into tears at the start.
Oh, bless her.
So
Oh.
it was hard going, but so I do apologise to everybody. I'm the first person that cries at the start of every
Not at all. Not at all. You did a fantastic job. You were great. Do you mind if we dive a bit more into Bell's palsy? And it's tricky with this podcast because I like the idea of learning from my guests, but I'm also a massive prepper. And so I try and kind of go halfway between the two and like prepare, but not do too much, if that makes sense. So in
episodes.
terms of, do we know what causes Bell's palsy?
Do you know, it's a question that I get asked day after day. And every time that somebody asks me this question, I go away and I do the research to check if it's changed. Because Bell's palsy specifically, and I've already said it's the most common form of facial paralysis, facial palsy, which is like facial palsy being the umbrella terminology. But I think it's something like 80% of people will get facial palsy because of Bell's palsy. The frustrating thing, it's idiopathic, which means they don't know for sure why people get it. There are links to viruses, to flu viruses and the herpes virus and things like that. Um, and stress is another one that you'll always get a doctor to say, sit down with you, and that classic GP conversation. By the way, there are some really good GPs out there, but that stereotypical poor GP conversation, similar to my own experience, where they go, oh, it's probably related to stress. Have you had a stressful time recently? So there are links to that, but in specifically in answer to your question, it's there isn't any there's no clear definition of why people experience it.
Is it possible to have it from birth?
So I know people that, and I'm really lucky to work with charities, and as you do, and I went to a charity day with Facial Palsy UK recently, and I had a really good chat with one of the parents there, and their beautiful child, 9 years old. He recognised me from the TV show. That was quite exciting. Kind of fanboying me, yeah, he experienced it from birth. And yeah, the doctors don't know why, and they don't know why he was born with Bell's palsy. But there are other conditions. Really quickly, there's Ramsay Hunt syndrome, which presents very similarly, but that's more, people tend to get a rash in their ear, around their ear, or they get pain in their ear. But with anything, it's not always the case that that happens. So there's so much to be learned in that world.
Mhm.
But yeah, like I say, Bell's palsy probably the most common.
Yeah, I think that's the one that most people have heard of. This might be a very stupid question, but is it possible to get facial paralysis on both sides of your face, or is it always one side?
Yeah, bilateral facial paralysis. So
Mhm.
yeah, absolutely. And I've known people where they have experienced it, very unfortunately, where they've had it on one side. So mine was on the right hand side of my face, and still limits my function on that side. And I've known people have it on one side, and then on their, if they've had it for a second time, which I've got to be really clear is rare. It doesn't happen to everybody. Touch wood, it doesn't happen to me, but they've then had it bilaterally as well. So it's completely unpredictable, I guess, in so many ways.
Do you do you have any anxiety of that potentially happening to you?
Massively,
Yeah.
absolutely massively.
Mhm.
I recently have been a bit unwell, and I still don't know to this day whether I have had a tick bite on my leg. So at the start of the summer, I went out, I was getting out and about more, and I had a bite on my leg, and I didn't really think anything of it. And it was only a few weeks later I started to become unwell, started to see this timeline appear of just illness through it. And I realized that a lot of people will experience facial paralysis on the back of tick bites if it's infected with Lyme disease. Somebody told me recently, and please go away and fact check this for people that are listening, but they told me it's something like 6% of ticks will carry it. So there's a really small chance,
Mhm.
and I'm not in a high risk area, but it could have been that, and it might still happen to me. And I really started to worry that in the second month where it's most common, and that's pretty much now, where it may happen to me again
Mhm.
for a different reason. So yeah, it's there. I don't want to go through it again. I'm sure I'll be fine, but
Mhm.
nobody wants to live that again. I guess
Yeah,
I've grown
understandable.
massively since then.
Mhm. Mhm. Is there any treatments? Obviously, in the show, you went down the surgical route. Is there steps before that? And is the surgical route kind of the end of the road? That's your last sort of nuclear option, so to speak?
So there's lots of different things that people can do. So when I first got diagnosed in 2001, there wasn't really any knowledge around that there is now. I probably should be fair to that. There was certainly knowledge around, but there was a lot more research and development that had been done since then. So I got told just to drink from the good side, which was bad advice. I went to the hospital, and they plugged me in with little electrodes on my face, which if anybody is ever telling you to put electrodes in like those little TENS machines that probably need now, but we all had in the 90s to give us a nice six pack that go onto your face. Absolutely, that is a absolute red flag if you hear or see people just give that to you. So there was lots of things around then. Now there are more specific the charities such as Facial Palsy UK who talk you through what to do. They very much tell you not to do certain things as much as encourage you to do the right things. But the sad thing is that if you are still experiencing limited function in your face within, what are we? So 3 to 6 months is the general recovery time. If you are not recovering at the rate that would be expected, then you can then go and get referred to facial palsy clinics. In Northern Ireland, there aren't facial palsy clinics, I don't believe. In the UK, otherwise in England, Wales, Scotland, there are, but there aren't that many. I was really lucky to find one that takes me 2 hours to get to, but it was a brand new clinic that was opening, and I got straight at the top of that list. But it's really hard. Like anything, you've got to go on a waiting list. So, so yeah, there are lots of people there to help you, whether that's Botox to inject Botox into your face to be able to help the the muscles and do that alongside physiotherapy to help rehabilitate your face and encourage blood flow and all sorts of things in your face. Um, but yes, in answer to your question, is surgery the very last stop? The surgery that I did was called get the right terminology. So it was selective neurolysis and myectomy, which
I've got it
basically
written down. I'm glad you pronounced it.
have I got it right? I think that's what
I think
yeah.
so. Yeah, you nailed
Yeah,
it.
so, it's nicknamed smile surgery is the nickname for it. So, I had that. I also had some work on the inside of my mouth, which is, a Latin phrase of DAO. You probably not got that written down. It's a muscle inside your mouth, and it was, as you talked about it on the show, the consultant, it blocks my smile. So it's there to, and it's designed to help us frown and do all of these movements that you would naturally expect. But it was blocking my smile. So she cut that nerve on the inside. And what it also did on the selective neurolysis was basically opening I'll give people a trigger warning if you're a bit squeamish to switch off for 30 seconds. It was cutting down the side of my ear, lifting my face up a bit like face surgery. What's the terminology? Facelift.
Facelift. Yeah.
And that's the next one. And that joke. But facelift going in and then microscopically cutting different nerves to be able to start freeing up the movement of my face. Surgery isn't just the tick and you're done. She did say to me, it might not work. And it's not worked 100%. I don't think there was ever an expectation to fix it 100%. And then I spent a good year working with my physiotherapy, having more Botox to rehabilitate and do lots of exercise and movements to be able to get it back on track. So it's a lot better than it was. It's not fully recovered though.
Hmm. Are you happy with the result considering what you had to go through? Do you think it was worth it?
I It's a really difficult question to answer. From the surgery point of view, I'm happy. I'm happy that I went through. It's definitely made a difference to me. But I know it's not cured, it's not fixed it. I'm not back where I was. Well, the biggest change that has been made is the emotional self-acceptance, that psychological change. Because when I look in a mirror now, I can stare in a mirror. I can sit there for a long time and look in the mirror and be happy with the person that looks back at me. I might spot that my smile isn't the same as what I see other people's smiles might be. I don't have the same movement as other people, but I accept myself and I love myself and I don't shy away from it anymore. So I guess it's been a dual approach really to it.
Mm. Yeah, from my perspective, it's difficult with that. I'm very much a uh, throw the kitchen sink at me kind of person. I think it's been so tough for so long that I mean, I literally kind of walk into the dermatologist and I'm just like, whatever it is, I don't care the risk, just give it to me. Um, and so when I just speaking very honestly and personally from my own perspective, I'm not saying this is right, of course. Um, I struggle with that idea of acceptance a lot, and it's something I'm trying to work on. I feel a hopelessness if I try and just accept my situation, if that makes sense. I get through on this belief that I'm going to find the thing, I'm going to find the cure, I'm going to fix this. It's just a matter of time. Just hang on in there. Um, and so, yeah, I guess this is something maybe I should be speaking to my counselor about rather than you. But I find it very. I find it scary. I guess that idea of um, just accepting my situation, accepting this is it, and accepting that I'm never gonna find my cure, which is hard.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question on the back of that?
Yeah,
Is
please.
do you does it consume you? Is it a big focus of everything that you are? Is it a huge part of your identity?
Yeah, massively. It dominates everything. To be honest with you, even when it's good, I'm kind of living in fear because it flares so inconsistently and goes up and down so inconsistently. I'm anxiously awaiting the next one, and I'm anxiously awaiting the next social event where it will be a problem because I'll feel embarrassed in the way that I look. And my day is very dominated by treatments and routines, and something quite common with people with AD is we're constantly experimenting. So it's like, oh, maybe it's soy, and so then you cut soy out, and then oh, maybe it's this, and maybe it's that, and it does just dominate your mind, your cognition. That was something I really noticed when I took a medication called dupilumab. It's one of the new biologics available for people with AD. And for about 6 months, I thought I was cured. I just didn't have any symptoms. It was unbelievable. Unfortunately, it kind of went off a cliff. But for those 6 months, it was just incredible. And what I really noticed was um, the freedom I had in my own mind. I just had so much more bandwidth. I had so much more. I just was just calmer in myself and had my full cognition. Um, and I think it's something very common for people with visible differences in condition and chronic conditions in general is the way that it really does just dominate your every waking thought, unfortunately.
The only thing I would say, and it at least you've already talked about, and many people relate, is it's individual to us and how we experience things. But I don't know about you. I saw my, and still is a big part of, you know, Bell's palsy being a big part of my identity. But I've realized that my identity isn't just down to one individual element of that. It isn't my smile. It isn't the function or lack of function that I have in my face. My identity is a caring person, a person that goes horse riding, a good son, a kind friend, somebody that stands up to justice. My identity is so much more than my visible facial difference.
Hmm.
And I have absolutely embraced all of those things. And when I look back at myself, when I talk to people, when I stand on stage, that I now do, I talk about me as an individual about so many, many things. And my Bell's palsy is just one of them. And I
Hmm.
don't let it consume me. But I
Hmm.
can understand, and I think certainly when you're talking about it, when it is there, when it's right in front of us, that is really hard to escape from. But I would encourage you to think about all the other things that you are as an individual, not
Hmm.
as your counsel, but all of the things that you are as an individual and all the
Hmm.
things that you're proud of and all of
Hmm.
the, and Jono says this in the show as well, and says it on social media. If you look in a mirror, am I okay to say this? So you're a good looking guy.
Oh, that's
Hopefully
very kind of you. Thank you.
that's an okay
Thank
thing
you.
to say.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
like, you've got an amazing smile. Like, so let's look at this amazing smile that you've got. All the amazing things that you see when you look at yourself in the mirror and focus on them. Don't focus on the things that drive you mad that you wish that you could change. Focus on the things that you love about yourself when you look in the mirror. Those are the things that you need to see as part of your identity.
Yeah. Yeah, I think maybe I need to work a little bit more on the psychological. It was interesting for the longest time. Everything was all about downplaying, right? It was just downplay, 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 make it as small a part of my life as possible. Just crack on, don't make a big deal out of it. Even though internally I was in turmoil with it. And now it's kind of the opposite. Now that I've stepped forward as an advocate and I'm more open and honest about who I am and my experiences, I feel like a weight has been lifted to a degree in that being honest and authentic about who I am and what I'm going through. So yeah, I would encourage people who are in the similar situation who to maybe I was in, um, try and find the courage if you can to step forward and to own and be authentic about who you are, because it does feel like a massive weight comes off your shoulders. It's funny because, with AD, there's just nowhere to hide. When I'm having a massive flare, it's very obvious what's going on. But in my mind, I'm like, oh no, don't make a big deal out of it, hide it, push it down. But I would say that there is a freedom to stepping forward. Have you found the same thing? Have you found that stepping forward and being an advocate and being very open and upfront about what you're going through has been quite liberating?
Yeah, and I do it in both ways. I also talk about the mental health challenges that I've had, the diagnosis of severe depression, about all of those things, and the business that I've grown whilst being depressed. We very rarely, if at all, ever associate the word success with mental health. We always associate it with failure. So I've been very open about both and talking about me as an individual, the challenges that I've gone through emotionally. Still don't know today whether they're connected or, well, they'll definitely be connected, but whether they were the root cause of my
Mm,
identity, my depression in so many ways of business. But with my facial difference, my visible difference, I really enjoy talking and educating and showing people now that yes, you can live like this, but you can just carry on with your normal life. And I think to answer your question specifically, I met with someone earlier this year and we talked about social distancing years ago. And it might not look like it when you watch the show, but years ago, well, I didn't speak about my facial visible difference for 20 years. I put on this metaphorical mask and I just ignored it and stopped smiling. It's a big thing I talk about in the show, and is my smile. And it's gone completely 360 in a way, is that I really struggled to even acknowledge what I was going through and this difficulty with smiling that I had, but it was very internal as well as external. Now I stand on stages and my keynote is literally called learning how to smile again. So I stand in front of a room and talk about smiling again and learning. And ironically, I'd had this name as a book and lots of different things that I've still got on a pile of to do that I need to get sorted. And my physio said to me once, she said, right, I think we're ready now to teach you how to smile again. And it was just a really, but everything happens for a reason. And when she said that to me, we're going to teach you how to smile again, I went, this is it. I've learned how to smile again internally, externally, and yeah, stand on stage and create this emotional distancing between the subject talking about it and how I've experienced it. And as a speaker, there's a phrase that I've learned, and there's some great fellows of the Professional Speaking Association that has helped me learn this. And it's about speaking from the wound. Sorry, get that phrase right. It's about speaking from the scar, not the wound. So the ability to have it healed doesn't have to have disappeared. In some cases, that doesn't disappear, as we know. But when it's still very much a wound, when it's still very much painful, that's not the time when you need to be standing on stage, sitting on podcasts, having conversations. That's something that you need to be going through. But
mm,
if you can get to the point where it has started to heal, then yeah, absolutely, I advocate for talking about it and opening up and having that conversation with absolute strangers, and that will give you some real compassion. I guess they see the compassion, but give you some real confidence and that love and kindness that you need to be able to, that's perhaps a little bit lacking from yourself. That self
Yeah.
disappears, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I do think I have started to heal in a sense from pretty much when I hit 30, I think. I think that your 20s and your teens are so the trenches in terms of looking different and your aesthetic, and all you have is kind of your social currency, and I think once you get to 30, you start to relax about those things a little bit more and start to kind of settle into yourself a little bit more. I know when yours started when you were 18, which is obviously a very difficult age for something like that to happen. Do you mind talking a little bit about your mental state to have something so significant happen when you were that age?
Yeah, 18, well, just before my 18th birthday, which almost feels like I was robbed of my 18th birthday and robbed of my 21st in so many ways as well. I I always talked about this in lots of ways, but it's really important to say I was very entrepreneurial from a very young age, as you now see in what I do. Very, very entrepreneurial. I was selling computers to my teachers. My mum would take me to drop me off at the end of the road, toddling into school and selling computers. I was designing business cards and brochures for my neighbors. I was very, very entrepreneurial. So when I was 18, and had this happen to me completely out of the blue, just waking up one morning with half of my face paralyzed, I genuinely felt like my life was over. I felt like someone had come along and just took all my dreams away from me. So at that point, it was very traumatic for so many ways, but it stopped me. It stopped all my dreams of all the life that I wanted to fulfill. And I talk about my mum a lot. She was and is a single parent, and I'm an only child. And I saw how much she worked so incredibly hard to make sure that she gave me everything that I possibly could want and have that other kids could get very easily. And I wanted to make sure that I could support her and pay it back to her, which I think she probably would argue I've done in the long term. But for 5 years, I spent every day that, as we do with people with visible facial differences, to look in a mirror every day for 5 years. I would be in tears twice a day, however often I would be in floods of tears every day that I looked in that mirror for 5 years. Um, you're probably gonna say to me, "Why 5 years? What happened?" He used all those negative, toxic phrases that we really shouldn't use in 2025, but forgive me for a moment to use them. So I told myself to man up. I told myself to get a grip. And I went out to the world and I just stopped smiling. I just thought the only way that I can get through my life is to stop smiling, and people wouldn't point it out to me. But a bit like armor, it's not completely perfect. People can still penetrate it through that armor. It can still slip down. That mask that you're wearing can slip down at any point. And whenever that did slip and people pointed it out to me, and I remember and specifically spoke about it in the TV show, when somebody said to me, well, said to a friend right next to me, like I wasn't there, "What's wrong with his face?" It might have been because I looked miserable. I wanted to go home because I'm the type of person that gets up and dance, and I enjoy dancing and enjoying the night. But when they said that, all I could think about was my Bell's palsy, the mask that I'd been wearing for so long, and I just wanted the floor to swallow me up and get home very quickly. And that put me back 10 years for that one comment. And I don't think in general society, I don't think that people realize how much that pushes us back. It,
Yeah, I thank you very much for sharing that. Yeah, that is really powerful to hear that how much one comment can make such a huge difference. And I don't know, speaking for myself, I live under the fear of that comment all the time, which gives a power to everyone else and disempowers me, and creates so much anxiety. And it's so frustrating when all you want to do is just crack on. It's in that situation where whether it's right or wrong, you want to kind of just crack on and get on with your life, and then to be openly reminded of it all the time for some people is just so incredibly difficult to deal with. I think it's really important as well to hear, the way you talk about how deeply it affects your life, because there will still be some people who just look at the aesthetic difference and think this is not that big of a deal. It's not life threatening. Why are you making such a fuss out of it? And you talk about the psychological impact, which is the overall overriding thing here. Is the psychological damage is so significant, and to try and go through that in your teens is just must have been incredibly difficult. You mentioned that you kind of felt you felt supported by your mum, your support network. Did you feel supported by the NHS and HCPs? I think you kind of touched on it earlier that potentially you didn't.
In one word, absolutely not. No, definitely not. I got all the wrong advice from my doctor. He said to me at the time, and something important to say is, if you experience facial paralysis, go and seek professional medical help as quickly as you possibly can do. There are steroids that you can be given. There are antibiotics that you can be given. There's some real mixture of diagnosis between Bell's palsy and Ramsay Hunt syndrome. My mind escaped me. So yeah, some huge differences between Bell's palsy and Ramsay Hunt syndrome. And doctors can get that wrong very quickly, but there are two different types of medication that you can have if you have Ramsay Hunt syndrome. So the reason I say that is back in 2001, the studies weren't out. They'd not done all of the research that they've now done. And my doctor said to me, "You don't want steroids, do you? So see how you are in a couple of weeks. And if you need to, we can give you steroids." That is now a 72-hour window. 2 weeks doesn't cut it. So I really wish that if I'd gone back in time, although then again, my life experiences have changed and we wouldn't be talking now otherwise. So in lots of ways, I don't regret it. But if I could go back and change the advice, I would have given myself the steroids very quickly.
Mhm.
And the doctor put me in touch, eventually referred me to the local, I think my mum calls it the cottage hospital, the local small hospital in the town. And I had a guy reading out of a textbook trying to work out what to do. And he didn't really know what to do at all. He was a student doctor, student physiotherapist, should I say. And he didn't know what to do. And he just winged it and did his very best. There is still so many people, though, that don't get that right support. They go and get in touch with a neurologist and just get all the wrong advice or the wrong support. And I just really felt let down by the NHS then. And I still do now in so many ways. And it might be controversial. I've had some great, amazing help through the facial palsy clinic. So that is at the Royal Stoke Hospital in Staffordshire. The facial palsy team there is a multidisciplinary team. To just give you a really quick makeup of this, so forgive me for a moment, but
No,
humour me
please
for
take
a
your time.
moment.
Hmm.
So in that team, you have plastic consultants. So plastics being they can go in and do that reconstructive surgery. They can go in and open you up and do selective neurolysis. They can do lots of things. By the way, the team that I'd worked with at that hospital had never done the surgery that I had through the private support that I had through Miss Savetta and through the surgery that she does. In fact, she's a teacher and they're some of her fellows. So you have plastic surgeon consultants. They can do that reconstructive surgery, or they can give you Botox and then they work with you. The other side of that is the facial therapists. So they are specifically facial therapy trained. They're under the advice of a international organization ultimately that can support you through it. And that's where the support stops. So very quickly we come back and we keep touching on this throughout this episode. All that they have in place is one, the physical, let's get you fixed. Let's come in
Hmm.
and do some surgery to fix whatever that is going on. or we'll do some physio to rehabilitate you. Nowhere in that whatsoever is a psychiatry, counseling, therapy side of it. There's no emotional support. When you're 18, when you're 40, no matter what age you are, you need that psychological support when you are going through that. I've seen it offered to cancer patients. I've seen it offered to stroke patients in some ways, but we don't seem to get that when we go in and we deal with a facial palsy clinic. Let's be honest, there's not that many facial palsy clinics throughout the UK, but we don't get that psychological support. And that's really frustrating. And it'd be really interesting to hear the views of yours and the visible difference, facial difference community. Is that a default thing to do? Or do we just stick to let's fix you or let's work towards fixing you? It's all the
Mm.
physical side every
Hmm.
time. And that's what let me down. If I'd had that as an intervention, then I wouldn't have struggled and gone through what I'd gone through for over 20 years.
That's really powerful to hear. Thank you for sharing that. And I think that's the experience of a lot of people, including myself. I think that there's this idea with facial difference that it's not dangerous and therefore it can be dismissed. But I think the psychological effects are very dangerous. And I think you look at suicide levels, and to think that wouldn't be at least a contributing factor is just silly, to say the least. And so I think that, as you say, yeah, there needs to be more of an emphasis and a focus on the psychological impact, because that is what is the hardest part of it, without a shadow of a doubt. You know, if there is a way to fix you quickly, I guess, then fine, focus on that. But if this turns into a chronic, longer term thing, then that psychological support is most definitely needed. Unfortunately, it's just the fact, isn't it, that the NHS is just stretched so massively. You know, and mentioned Northern Ireland earlier, and there's a real issue with AD in Northern Ireland that people can no longer get moisturisers on prescription. So, you know, a little kid whose skin is in absolute pieces and can't sleep and is being bullied, can't get the medication that he needs on prescription, which is just awful to hear.
You have that with
Um,
Botox as well. So Janet Robb has been doing some amazing work over there. They've formed, or they were in, I can't remember the terminology for their parliament over there. And she went along and has been campaigning for it for a while. And now she's found two places, I believe, I could be wrong, where they are offering Botox in Northern Ireland. Before that, she had to get on a plane, fly over to London, her surgery or have a consultation, whatever it might be, fly back in an evening because, of course, it's all expense that she had to pay for just to go to an appointment. That's not right. That that is so wrong. I know I complain about going 2 hours up the road, but at least I don't have to get a plane to effectively a different country.
it's very, very concerning, isn't it, for sure, when people aren't able to get the care they need. So in terms of like um, I guess would you be able to give sort of a basic roadmap? Let's say, for example, you're a carer of someone with Bell's palsy, or maybe you have Bell's palsy. So you go to your GP, and then this is something I try and drive home to people, is that we have this right to choose in the UK. So you don't have to just go along with the ride. You know, you can turn up to that GP appointment and kind of say what you want, what you need, and so then you get. So I guess you go to GP, get referred to a specialist clinic, and then ideally you then push for counselling as well. Would you say that's a kind of a strong foundational roadmap for people?
Mm. So the ideal, really, so that what I would like to see that pathway. Yeah, it's a really good question. As I see it, go and get that medical support, whether that is urgent care in a sense of your GP. Of course, Monday to Friday, trying to get a GP appointment is really difficult to do. So, whether that's urgent care, make sure you are seeing somebody within that first day or two. You need to see them ASAP. Uh, have a look and make sure that you are looking for signs of, yes, okay, 80% of people will have Bell's palsy, but look for those signs of Ramsay Hunt syndrome. So not always there, but is there a rash? Is there pain in your ear? There are guidance and there are nice guidelines around this as well, I believe. But have a look at Facial Palsy UK's website specifically, or any other charities like Changing Faces, etc. And just make sure that you're asking those questions. And then at that point, the biggest thing I would say to you is relax. Take take that medication that you are given and relax, and don't try to force anything, because if you do, you could cause more damage by trying to do any stretches, try to do any massages. There are different stretches and massages that you can do at different points. So go and have a look on Facial Palsy UK and go and have a look to see what they specifically are. And then if you aren't, and unfortunately, the way that the UK works at the moment, they go and speak to a facial palsy clinic if they haven't started to recover. I can't remember where the point is. I want to say 8 weeks, but I honestly can't remember. But I would definitely encourage people to go and see that. And yeah, go and get some very early intervention from an emotional support. In the NHS, I know when people get mental health support, it's what, a 12, 14-week waiting list, depending how lucky you are and what area you're in. But go and get that support mentally. Don't rush back into work. Reach out to your EAP or employee assistance program. Go and see if you can get that mental health support, and don't rush back to work. So many employers might look at you and say, "Oh, well, you're fine, aren't you? Your face is working. Come back to work." But there's fatigue that you will experience, and there's also the emotional side of things as well. So yeah, so the biggest thing, if you are able to, we're not all in this privileged position, but to just relax and take time out. And even when I had surgery, I was told, go and do nothing for a long time and go and just relax and don't get into stressful situations, because that will delay your recovery
Mhm.
and it will impact the effectiveness of the surgery that you have.
Mhm, mhm. And just to throw it out there, me and Gary were talking earlier about Gary's joining the team at Changing Faces, which is very, very exciting.
Ah,
They offer one-on-one counselling, and so that's maybe someone to reach out to for some support if you're not able to get it through the NHS. In terms of your mindset and your psychological space that you're in, how do you think that differs now compared to when you were 18?
I, I think I won't swear on this podcast,
Yeah, feel
but
free to.
I don't give a stuff anymore. I think is
Mhm.
probably that, and I don't know if that comes with age, and because we've done what we needed to do, and yeah, absolutely, I've got another 40 years to go in many ways, I'm sure, but I don't give a stuff anymore. When I talk about living my life uninhibitedly, that is how I live my life now. If I'm having a bad day, I'll tell you I'm having a bad day. If I'm having a good day, you'll hear it first. I don't live my life by what other people think anymore, unless it's, and I'll throw a little caveat into that. I do care if they think wrongly of me. If they think I'm a horrible person because of X, Y, and Z, I will correct them, because that's probably not true. There's very rarely that anyone can say that about me. So I like the honesty in that. But otherwise, I don't really care. I'm here to look after me. I am my priority. And you know the work that I do around the word selfish. I see that as a very positive word.
Mhm,
I live my life more selfishly. It's all about me. And if I can make sure that I am as full as I possibly can do, I can then show up and support and help other people as I do. But I am my priority, and I need to make sure I exist and I am living my life the best I can do before I start taking from that battery of mine,
mhm,
because we can't show up for other people when we're running on empty. We really can't. So when I was 18, when I felt like my life was over and I didn't think, if I could go and have a conversation with 18-year-old Gary, I would definitely say, don't give up. Your dreams haven't disappeared. They are just going to be slightly different, but go and own it. And one of the things I wanted to say to you and other people that are living with visible or facial differences is, yes, look in your identity at all of those other things that you can love about yourself, but own it. Like, if you've got a visible difference, if you're having a flare up, be like, oh, it's a nightmare. Yeah, look, but it does this and this, isn't it? But it is what it is. It's hard to say. That's really hard to say, and I get it. I get it more than most people might get that. But I now smile and I go, "Oh, yeah, I've got a really lovely smile, and it might not be like other people, but can they do this? And do they do that?" And, like, one person said to me once I was like the eyebrow guy because I could only move one eyebrow. So it looked quite flirty and quite provocative, and it was like, "Oh, the eyebrow guy."
Oh, The
So
Rock.
so that was my thing. I was like, "Oh, yeah, but, like, I really rock this one eyebrow." I've had, like, Botox in it now to kinda bring it down. But I was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna own that." And I
Yeah,
think it's
yeah.
trying to find confidence in your identity from that point of view. And if I could have just owned it at 18, then
Mhm,
I can do. And I will just a quick example of this. Um the way of the world when we bump into each other, we walk past each other and go, "Hang on a second, you're Andy. I know who you are." And we just we in the moment won't recognize each other, then the next second we will do. And I was in Birmingham in April this year, and I was absolutely convinced that the person I was on a lift with was somebody that I knew. And I said, "Wow, I know you, don't I?" And she said, "Nope, definitely not." And she and I will use her phrase. And she said, "You probably recognize me because there's not many big, bold, bald women in the world." But she owned it. She absolutely owned it. She looked fabulous, and that wasn't the point that I was making at that time, and I did walk away feeling a little bit anxious about everything I stand for. I was with somebody else and said, "Have I just undone everything that I believe in by calling that person out?" And she said, "Absolutely not. You said, 'I know you,'" and she came back and she owned it, and she looked absolutely amazing.
mhm.
And I think that's what I wish I'd done at 18, is just owned it.
Yeah, yeah. Interesting, very interesting. I think that's what I struggle with the most is I almost it's okay when I'm around people who understand and I've explained it, like a kind of a small team situation. But when you're in a bit of a bigger situation, it's almost like I wanna have a T-shirt that says, "It's his AD," like, this is that's what it is. I know you're all, wondering, and this is what it is. So how do you deal with the stares in the comments? Let's maybe take for an example, back to that example you spoke earlier, where you said it was more than a stare, it was more than a comment, it was a malicious, nasty comment, and that person said, "What's wrong with his face?" How do you think you would handle that situation nowadays? And that is purely me asking to try and figure out what I need to be doing in those situations.
Do you know what? I'd tell them. I'd tell them what was wrong with my face. So I would probably say, I don't know if I'd be so direct as to say, "Could you change your language?" Because there's nothing wrong with my face. I'd actually, when I've had, and people, so let's be careful. Let's be really careful here and really courteous to those people. They probably didn't mean it maliciously. There's very few people out there that intend to offend you by saying what is wrong with your face. What they probably mean is what's wrong, what's caused it, what's your difference, and their language isn't as informed as our language that we might use. So I probably wouldn't correct them on it very quickly. But if I did, I'd probably say, "Well, there's nothing wrong with my face, but this is what it is, and it spells palsy, and there's 100,000 people in the UK that have facial paralysis right now, and it's something I had when I was 18, but I've learned to live with it." And I'd go into education mode, and I would tell them about it, and I'm sure their reaction would be like, "Oh wow." They'd probably apologize very quickly, but they would very quickly just be really intrigued and go, "Oh, I know somebody that had this," and they'd open a conversation with you. And I think this is where we need to be really careful, is that I don't want to upset or offend the person that is saying what's wrong with your face. I want to educate them, because they'll feel the moment I say, "Well, there's nothing wrong with my face," and they'll go, "Oh no, I don't mean to offend you," will be the natural reaction. But they're curious. And I think that's one thing that I've realized, is that people are curious, and curiosity is innovation. It's excitement. It changes the world. And if somebody is curious enough to ask you that question, "What is wrong with your face, Andy?" Be like, "Oh, well, it's this." And you explain it to them. Wow, I've never heard of that.
Mm. It's a very kind and gracious way to deal with it for sure. I think part of my issue is that I'm still so triggered by it, and I'm still so I'm triggered by their thoughtfulness, their lack of thoughtfulness, and their lack of tact, I suppose. And my inner chimp just goes bananas, so to speak, and just wants to go absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
Um,
get lost and
yeah, yeah, it's difficult, but it has helped again stepping into this advocacy stuff that I see it as more of my job. And so, when those situations arise, it's kind of like time to go to work, I suppose, and educate somebody. In terms of, there's quite a lot of, I've seen quite a lot of celebrities who have spoken out about facial paralysis. I'm not sure if it was specifically Bell's palsy, but I've seen it was Justin Bieber had a thing, Thor, the strongman. I think it was Talisa had different things. Is there any celebs that are doing good advocacy work beyond when their symptoms resolve, or is there anyone to look out for?
not really. And I think there's a real challenge that I've noticed, and I had this conversation only recently with somebody in our world, and there's a so I won't out them, but there's a particular actor that is on a show that most of us will watch, and their wife had Bell's palsy, and they are a big advocate of Bell's palsy and wanting to talk more about that condition. I really wish there was representation in TV, but it's really difficult for a show in mainstream TV like EastEnders or Coronation Street or wherever it might be to show somebody that is experiencing Bell's palsy and show it in an authentic, ethical way. But unless somebody goes and puts lots of Botox in their face for acting reasons, how are they going to show what Bell's palsy looks like in a TV show? And I don't know if is that ethical, is it not? I think it's really important to show it, but I really wish that there was a TV company out there, somebody that could be on a TV show and talk about the one thing that whenever I say I had Bell's palsy and my response is always that I always get is, oh yes, I know somebody that had that. Where is it? Where is it on TV? Where is that
Hmm.
representation?
Hmm.
And I really wish that there was.
Hmm.
Maybe I can own it. I'm not a
I was gonna
celebrity
say,
at
yeah,
all. You
yeah,
kindly
maybe. I know somebody who could play that role for sure. Yeah, that would be, and that Changing Faces are doing big things for that. Their kind of main push is representation in the media. I would say that's people like Crystal and Romeo are doing fantastic work with that. But yeah, there most definitely does need to be more representation, and it would be nice. It would be good for represent. I feel like step one is these projects where the visible difference is kind of the central theme, stuff like a different man, things like that, which are valuable and good. But in terms of making it more normal and making it more mainstream, I think there needs to be roles where it's not the central theme of the project, if that makes sense. They're not just on screen because of the visible difference. It's just as you said earlier, it's just a part of who they are rather than entirely who they are. But yeah, I think there is a lot of work going into that behind the scenes of changing faces and stuff like that. In terms
yeah.
of projects yourself, do you have any big projects that you're working on at the moment?
Oh, what that I can tell you about, certainly. I am certainly doing a lots of stuff with charities, and
Hmm.
when when will this go out? I'm trying to make sure that
Not for a little while yet.
it won't go out for a couple of weeks yet. So
Oh no, it'll be a couple of months at least.
yeah. So by the time this has been announced, I will be. This will go out. I'll have been announced as a campaigner for Changing Faces UK, which is great. I get to sit in a room with you. I feel like we need to make sure we talk to everybody else, but you and I will just end up just chatting away and forgetting anyone else is there.
It's
So
they time the day really nicely, so you have plenty of time to just mill around and chat with everyone.
brilliant. Oh, we'll spend
Yeah.
a long time chatting on that day. So yeah, we're getting together. I know it in 6 weeks' time from when we're recording this to go down and do some media training and public speaking training. Just feel like I've done both of those, but bring it on.
Yeah, I feel like you'll
More
be all right
learning.
with that. Yeah, I think you need to
Yeah,
teach the class.
yeah. I might know the person that's running it. I don't know. So that's great. So yeah, so announced as a campaigner for that. I am working on quite a few projects that are very subversive as it was at the moment. Certainly around the work that I'm doing around the word selfish. I've got a book that is definitely in development, so much so that I'm going to show you half. It's
Please.
literally that's the first
There
quarter
you
of a
go.
book. The book
Nice.
is written, it's got 46,000 words. It's all about why selfish leaders are the best leaders. I absolutely am really needing to get back to the book and writing about my experience of growing up and living with Bell's palsy. And I feel like I can complete that book now
Mm.
in so many ways. So that's something that I need to do. But I've just got so much going on, nothing too exciting, but lots of different projects at this moment in time.
I feel like every time I look on social media, you pop up. I see that yellow branding, and I know, yeah, there's Gary. Your branding is great; it's so strong. And I
Thank
still,
you.
like I was saying earlier, I feel a bit of guilt in that I don't. I've had my head down so much in terms of doing my podcast and doing my stuff that I need to get my head up and start supporting all the other advocates that are doing things as well. But yeah, so thank you for everything you're doing. Your presence is brilliant online. You're always there, and thank you for all the work you're doing. How can people find you if they wanted to reach out or follow your work?
Well, I was going to say in EastEnders, if you can get me in that, I'll happily like butter a couple of baps and or what cobs or whatever they're called down there and do that. But no, before that happens, and that would be a great project, wouldn't it? I can tell you now that no one's got me in line for that, but that would be a really secret project. But yeah, like watch this space if anyone knows anyone in that world. But yeah, if you want to get hold of me, then please come and find me. I'm on every social media platform. So Gary Parsons UK, so one R in Gary, and then Parsons with an S on the end of it. So Gary Parsons UK, or you can just go to my website, which is garyparsons.uk. It's really easy, really. Yeah, check me out. I'm starting to grow on social media as like the selfish speaker, in
Yeah.
a positive way. So yeah, maybe search for that.
It's good. Yeah, it's really eye catching. Yeah, your branding and your messaging is really eye catching, which is perfect for social media, isn't it? Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Gary, and thank you on behalf of the Visible Difference community for the part you played in Love My Face. I think you did an excellent job. I think we all have various conditions, but we're all combined by similar themes of low self esteem or etc. And I think you did a brilliant job in representing that and getting that across. So thank you very much for that.
Thank you. And thanks for letting me be part of this and part of your journey.